All right, so I've had someone ask a question, so I'm going to give you, I think, is our first video explaining some of the questions from the textbooks or from the assignment. So this one is actually from the textbook. This is page, what is it, page 245, number 11. So this was a question from our textbook, some of the review from chapter 6, and later on this week, Wednesday, we will have a few question assignment, a test where you're going to actually have to write things and take a picture and email them to me or send them in to me. We'll see how that goes. We'll get our first practice at that this week. But something like this may be on that particular test. So we have 15 schools in a school district. We have the table showing the number of students to the number of teachers. Just a comment about how they show us tables. And usually the top one will be our x's and the bottom one will be our y values. So we'll use that when we make our graph. Something else about this table, just be careful. It doesn't go up by nice terms here. We're not going to be making an equation. In fact, when we get to this point here, it's 11. It actually jumps way back down here, and then it goes up to 46 and then comes back down inside at 31. So you're just going to plot all of these points and make a graph, and then these questions are all based on reading the graph. All right, so we're going to graph this relationship between students and teachers, and then we're going to read the graph to answer some question about how many teachers we would have and how many students we'd have. Okay, so let's get started. Let's make a sketch of this graph. So we're going to make a sketch of our information. Remember we said the students are going to go down here on the bottom, and the teachers are on the y-axis. Label your graph. So this is our teachers. We also need a title. So maybe I'll call this one Urban Schools. So we need some sort of title. So I'm looking for a title. We've labeled the axes. All right, before we can plot the points, we need a scale. So we need a good scale for our numbers. So I'm looking at the students. We go up to 1,025. That's our maximum. But if I look a little closer in the question, I want to talk about 1,200 students. So I'm going to set up my graph here. I'm clearly not going to go up by ones or even tens. I think 100 would be a good choice. So if this is 100, this would be 200. Then we can have 300 and 400. And I don't need you to grab your ruler, and I know a lot of you won't have graph paper at home. If you do, that's great. If you don't, it's fine. We're making a sketch. So as long as they look to be about equal distances apart, I'm okay with that. And then there's my 1,200. So I'm just making a sketch, and I'm trying to fit all of these in a nice scale. Okay, do not put 100 and then 250 and then 300 and then 450. Those will all come. You need a scale that goes up by nice round numbers, 100, 200, 300, 400. So when we get something like 250, we just know that that is going to be in here somewhere. There's 250, and we'll put that up onto our graph. Okay, let's go to the teacher side of this graph. Now in this case we only go up to 46 or maybe 50 in the question, so I can probably go up by tens here now, maybe even fives. But let's count it off the way I've made this graph. 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Yeah, it looks like I can go up by 5. That'll be 10. This will be 15, 20. This line here is 25, 30, 35, 40. This is 45, and this would be 50. And note, I don't have to write every single number in there as well. It could get quite messy if I try to put every single number in here, and that's not even the right number, 10 and 20, and so on. It could be quite messy, especially down here on the bottom for my students. So don't be afraid to leave a gap. I know this is 300. I don't have to write 300 in there. Okay, let's go ahead and plot our points. I'm going to change colors. We're going to plot these in red here then. And I need 9 teachers and 100 students. So 100 students, there were 9 teachers. So we're just going to estimate where that would be. That looks to be about 9. Okay, at 250, so that's this red line that we did. At 250, there were 15 teachers. And we're just going to plot all of these points. So at 300, we had 17 teachers. And at 450, so again, somewhere in there, we had 23 teachers. So if the line is 25, 23 is probably a little bit below that line. We go to 700, and we get 33 teachers, so a little bit below this line, 33. And now we drop down to 150 teachers again. So I go way back here and plot that point at 11, so just above that line. Okay, and it's looking like we got a pretty straight line here. It's okay if it's not exactly straight, right? Again, it's a sketch, and these numbers aren't going to be perfectly laid out for us. This is real data. Okay, so now I have 41,025, so that's going to be close in here, and I have 46, so just a little bit above that line. And finally, back down to 650, we had 31, so just a little bit above that one. Okay, so we plotted our points. Let's go ahead and kind of make a sketch of this, and I'm trying to draw a single straight line that goes through most of them. Again, it doesn't have to touch everything. Definitely do not zigzag this along connecting all the dots. We just want a single straight line, as straight as we can, going through as many of those points as we can. If we get something out here like this that doesn't actually look like the line goes through it, that's okay. We now have our straight line. Now, we're not finding the equation of this line. For this particular type of question, we're going to use the graph and just read the graph to get our answers. So that is actually part A. That looks really good. Let's go to part B then. Okay. So this is actually A. Now I'm going to go to B. I'm going to slide off to the side here. And if we have 850 students, how many teachers would we have? So I'm going to find 850 would be in here somewhere. I'm just going to read up to my graph and then read across. Try to make those as straight as possible. Again, you don't have to grab your ruler, but any sort of straight edge you can read up and across. Now we need to figure out what is this number. Well, if this here is 40 and this is 45, that looks like to be about 42. Now I'm going to give you a range. Okay, so I will maybe give you a range of 41 to 44. It should be somewhere in there. So if you had 45 or 40, it may not get the full mark there, but if you had a 43, I'd give it to you. You had a 42, you'd get that mark. Okay, so it is an estimate. Okay, let's do the next part. We got 1,200. 1,200, we actually didn't test 1,200. In fact, this is what we would call from an earlier video extrapolation. We're guessing based on this graph if this trend continues. And we had 1,200. I'm going to read up and across, and it looks like I'd probably have maybe a little more than 50. Maybe I have 52 to 54. Somewhere in there. Again, I'll give you a range estimate based on your graph. Okay, let's go part C, wrap this one up. How many students might attend if there are 30 teachers? We're going to do the same thing. We're just going the other way. Maybe I'll change colors here. So here's 30 teachers. If I read across and down, trying to keep that as straight as possible, it looks like around 600. Now, depending on your graph, I may give you something like 580 to 620, somewhere in there. And we go again to 50 teachers. There was 50. We read across, and then I read as best I can down. Again, it looks like a little more than 1,100, right? There's 1,000, that is 1,100, and there's 1,200. So I'm thinking we have somewhere between 1,100 to maybe 1,150. Okay, we're estimating. Okay, keep the questions coming as you try the practice, and these are practice, you're not sending these in, or if it's something that we have done and you did send in, ask. Send me a quick note through email from the website or just an Edsby message. You guys are doing that pretty good. So send me the questions and we can make more of these videos to make sure that we're all on track here. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.